Hello my dear sewing friends, it's Elisa here with Thoughtful Creativity, and guess what? Sweater weather is finally here, and that's the reason why in this tutorial we're going to be making one. It's easy, it's stylish, it's comfy, you name it. The possibilities are endless to pair it with anything you want, and to make it really simple and easy for everybody to make one and for everybody to understand the construction. What we're going to do is we're going to take a very simple geometric shape like diamond and we're going to transform it into the pattern for this sweater. And I got away by using just about 1 yard of fabric, about 1 hour of my time. This is your first time working with knits, maybe a little bit longer, but the idea is still the same. It's really easy to make one. You will need just a couple of measurements of your body and then simple tools like paper, pencil, measuring tape, sewing machine, or a serger, whichever one you have. And remember, if I can make a really cool sweater, then you can do it as well. So let's get started. You're watching Easy Sewing DIY, a weekly series where I make a simple pattern, then I sew it and love it. Everything is straightforward so you can make it as well. Tune in for new episodes every weekend. So the few measurements that you're going to need to create a sweater are actually very simple. Number one, you're going to need the length of the actual garment. What you're going to do is you're going to take your measuring tape, you're going to place it on the very edge of your back neckline, make sure that you center it, and then you're going to drop it all the way down. You're going to put your finger where your hips start, and that is going to be the length of your sweater. Mine is 18 inches. If you feel that that might be quite short, don't worry, we will also be adding a band on the bottom of the sweater as well, so that will extend the length of your garment. Now, mark the midpoint of this measurement. For me, that's 9 inches. Number two, we will need the full measurement of your open arms, and that is very simple. You're gonna take your measuring tape, you're gonna kind of pinch or hold your measuring tape like this between your thumb and your index finger, and then you're going to stretch your measuring tape and you want to make sure that it kind of goes across your bust, and then you're going to try to hold it with your other thumb like this. There we go, like that. And then you take your measurement. So mine is 56 inches. Half of that measurement that we're going to use in our pattern is going to be 28 inches for me. To complete this step, start at the midpoint of your previous measurement and draw a straight line. And for me, as mentioned, this line is going to be 28 inches long, but you, of course, guys, use your own measurements. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to complete the diamond shape, or to be precise, half of the diamond, since we're only working with half of the pattern. Connect those 2 points, and you're going to repeat the same thing for the top and the bottom. Now, when it's done, we are ready to start with our pattern. I'm going to use orange Sharpie for you guys so that way you will see a little bit better. And we're going to start with the neckline. I'm going to take 3.5 inches to the right, and again, all of this was going to be in your instruction sheet that is available to the members of the channel. However, you can use your own neckline measurements. You can simply copy them from a well-fitting t-shirt. I'm going to take 1 inch up to account for the shoulder shape. And then the next thing after that, I'm going to take 2.5 inches down for the depth of my neckline. After that, yes, I'm going to be using a plate to really make nice rounded neckline. And as well, as I mentioned before, you can use a t-shirt that you already have, or maybe another blouse or sweater to mimic the neckline that you like. The next measurement that we're going to need for this pattern is the length of your actual shoulder. If you're wearing a t-shirt, it makes it a little bit easier for you to measure one, but if not, no worries. This measurement doesn't have to be super precise, but we will need to have this measurement, and you will see why in just a few moments. Take your measuring tape, place it on the very edge of the neckline, drop it all the way till the beginning of the seam. For me, that's 4 inches, and then you will write down your own measurement. Now from this point, we're going to take 4 inches, which is going to be the length of the shoulder that we just took. And of course, you're going to be using your own measurements. And this particular measurement is going to give us an opportunity to really create a nice sweater shape and give us some room to move as well. For the next step, you're going to connect the 2 points, the edge of the neckline and the edge of the shoulder. Now, to complete the whole sleeve, what we're going to do is we're going to need to take a look right over here. And I do find it easier if we kind of reverse engineer the whole process. So here you see my finished garment, here you see the pattern that we're going to get to in a second. And this is the edge of the diamond shape that we cut off. And you see that's the beginning of the cuff. Now when we measured the measurement of our open arms, we did pinch our measuring tape just like this. So now you have to find that spot where you want your cuff to begin. For me, the spot is just about right over here. Now when you have found that spot, if you want to mimic my result or if you want to do your own, whichever, you're going to measure that spot and give yourself about half an inch, maybe an inch of wiggle room so that way it's not too tight. That is going to be the measurement for your sleeve width. Now do remember how many inches you need from the edge of the diamond and then find that spot on your pattern and mark it. I measured 6 inches from the edge of the diamond and measured 4 inches across, and it just so happened that that measurement fell within the black lines of the diamond. However, if yours goes above that, that's totally fine. The black lines are there just to give us the original shape to work with, so you don't have to be concerned going above or below them. Now draw a straight line from the edge of the shoulder all the way to the edge of the sleeve. The last measurement that we're going to need is the width of the hips, but not the widest part of the hips, but the part where you stopped the length of your garment. Remember when we measured the length of the garment on the back? I dropped it all the way to the beginning of the hips, and that's what I'm going to measure. So you're going to take your measuring tape, you're going to put it all the way around, and my measurement of the beginning of my hips is actually 36 inches. However, I would like it to be a little bit roomier for my sweater, so I'm going to extend it to 40 inches. If you're not sure how much roomier you would like it to be, you can always add the length on the measuring tape. Put your finger on that measure, okay, pinch it, and just kind of see how much room do you have here in that area. So 40 inches is perfect for me, and we're going to use quarter measurement of that for our pattern. So 10 inches will be the measurement that I'm going to use. So the worksheet that I'm using here is actually available for the members of my YouTube channel and my community. And if you would like to, you can click the join button over here and subscribe. But if not, no worries, just use a pencil and a paper to write these measurements down. Now from the bottom of the sweater, I took 2 inches up, and you can take more or less depending on your preference. Now connect these 2 dots, and that will actually shape the bottom half of your sweater sleeve. And you see that there's quite an angle going on over here, so definitely go ahead and curve it in to create a smooth transition. This next step wasn't really planned, I just decided to add it in a moment, and I added 1 inch to the bottom of the sweater. I always think that, you know what, if I cut it too long, I can always shorten it, but not the other way around. And that's the reason why I took that extra inch, just to be safe. Now onto the cuff. For the cuff length, I decided to take 5 inches, and for the cuff width, I decided to take 3.5 inches. It is a little bit shorter, half an inch shorter than the actual width of the sleeve, just because we're going to stretch the cuff as we sew it in. Now let's draft the bottom band of the sweater. I'm gonna go for 9.5 inches, which is half an inch shorter than the actual width of the sweater. But it all really depends on how stretchy is your fabric. So it might feel a little loose, and if it does, just go ahead and cut it shorter. Now I'm going to make it 2 inches tall and go ahead and mark it as bottom band. After that, let's cut everything out. Cut the cuff and the band separately, and as you have noticed, we've drafted the front and the back piece as one piece since they're pretty much identical except for the neckline, and I'll show you how to deal with that in a second. Now on the cuff, you'll mark the fold and the direction of the stretch, since your cuff needs to stretch this way. You're going to do the same step for your sweater, mark the direction of the stretch, and the same step for the bottom band. This is going to make it a little bit easier for us to cut everything out. So dear sewing friends, I have a very quick question to ask you. Does working with simple geometric shapes and transforming them into a sewing pattern make it easier for you to understand how things work? I know for me it does make more sense, but I also wanted to get your opinion on that, and if I should continue a series like that. And if it makes it easier for you, then it makes it easier for me as well. So just let me know in the comments below, all right? Thank you. All right, let's talk about fabric and let's get sewing. 4-way stretch is best for this project. However, you can get away with 2-way stretch, but it has to be stretchy. This is medium weight knit from Hobby Lobby. It has a 2-way stretch and a really nice structure. I'm going to place it on the fold and I'm going to cut my front piece. Take a look what I'm doing here with a front neckline. I'm going to slash it like this. I'm going to fold it onto itself so that way I can cut it out really nice and only use one piece for both front and back. I'm also adding my seam allowances as I go since I did not add any seam allowances to my paper pattern. Now, since I'm only using 1 yard of fabric as mentioned, I'm really unable to place the back piece on the fold as well. So I'm going to add a center back seam, which is totally fine. You see a lot of that on ready to wear, and a lot of times it's done to make sure that you get the most value out of your fabric and the space available. Now before we do any other sewing, let's finish that center back seam over here. Go ahead and pin it in place just to make sure that it's nice and neat, and then use a sewing machine with a zigzag stitch or a serger, whichever one you have. Now this is how the serge seam looks like, and if you flip it open you will have a full back detail just like this. Super awesome. Now go ahead and lay it flat, take your front piece and lay them right sides together just like this. Now since our front and back pieces were completely identical except for the necklines, they should align really nicely. You're going to sew here and you're going to sew on the bottom as well. The only openings you're going to leave open is the opening of the sleeve and the opening of the band as well as the neckline. Everything else will be serged. That's what you should have. There we go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take care of the cuff. Now you see me cut the cuffs, and here are 3 things to remember. Number 1, you see me folding it twice because our cuff is going to create a double-sided tunnel for our hand. Number 2, you want to make sure that you add your seam allowances since I did not add any seam allowances throughout my paper pattern. And number 3, you want to make sure that you follow the direction of the stretch so that way you can actually get into your sleeve and into your cuff. Now, once the one is done, you have to actually cut 2. Once you cut both of the cuffs, let's sew them. Now you want to make sure that you sew them the correct way. You don't want to sew them this way. You actually want to sew them the other way to create a long tube and sew along this edge over here. Now once that is done, go ahead and turn it inside out and create that double-sided tube I was talking about. There we go. Now let's attach that cuff to our main project. Now this is top, this is bottom, and you're going to take your cuff and you're going to align it with the bottom seam of your sweater so that way it doesn't look awkward. You're going to put them like this and you're going to align the bottom seams and pin them in place. Once you've pinned them in place, you're going to sew them together. Now because the cuff is actually slightly smaller than the actual sleeve of the sweater, you might need to stretch it to get it in place. However, it's not that difficult to do, just stretch as you go. And this is how the cuff looks when it's all done. Now you're going to repeat exactly the same step for the other side. Once the cuffs are done, let's take care of the neckline. You're going to take your measuring tape, you're going to measure the actual length of the neckline. And now let's do a little bit of math. It's not difficult, but it's going to ensure that your neckline is really nice and neat. So the length of my neckline is 19 inches and we only want to work with half of that since everything that we do is on the fold. So half of that is going to be 9.5 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and make my life easier here and going to add 1/2 inch of seam allowances to that so that way I work with nice round number like 10 inches. Then I'm going to divide that in 5 equal parts, which is going to equal 2 inches. Then I'm going to subtract those 2 inches from 10 inches, which is going to be 8 inches. 8 inches is going to be the total length of my neckline. If that does not make sense, go ahead and replay it one more time. But basically, you want to subtract 1/5 of the length of the neckline from the neckline, or 20%, whichever makes it easier for you guys. It's going to get you the same result. Here I'm drafting my neckline. It's going to be 8 inches long, 2 inches tall. I'm going to place it on the fold just like so, and I'm also going to mark the direction of my stretch so that way it's easier for me to cut it out. Again, if that does not make sense, go ahead and replay it one more time, and I'm going to say it one more time. We're just basically subtracting 1/5 or 20% of the length, so that way it really snaps in place when you sew it in. Once you've cut your neckband, go ahead and sew the seam that you see right over here. And once that is done, it is time for us to sew in our neckband into our project. Go ahead and take your sweater and mark center front and center back. I don't have to mark center back because I have a seam over there, but if you don't, then go ahead and mark it. Now take your neckband and mark the same placements. And instead of a pin, just make a little notch. That will make it a little bit easier for you. Now, a lot of times people will mark it quarter way instead of halfway. I do halfway because it's easier for me that way. If it's easier for you to do quarter way, go ahead and do quarter way. Now mark the placement of the center front of the neckband with the center front of the sweater, and we'll be good to go. As you sew, make sure that you stretch the neckband in place. If this is your first time ever sewing the knit neckband, go ahead and practice on a scrap piece first and then do the neckband. Neckbands, they're not necessarily difficult, they're just a little tricky. And needless to say, if this is your first time drafting anything, go ahead and use some old fabric or fabric that you don't need, so that way you are sure that you're doing everything correctly. And this is how it looks when it's done. There we go, our neckband is in place. The last thing for us to do is the band on the bottom of the sweater. And the idea here is exactly the same as with the neckband. You're going to cut it out, you're going to sew the seam, you're going to mark the center front and center back, and then you're going to sew it in place by stretching the band. And ta-da! You've made a sweater. Really nice, really fun, easy, stylish. All the thumbs up on this video go to you for doing it, giving it a try, being adventurous, and really being persistent as well. If you enjoyed this video, chances are you might like my other sewing videos as well. I have quite a few of those on my channel, so do check them out right over here. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy sewing. I know you can do it, so see you next time. Bye!